Hello and welcome to Time Management. This workshop is being recorded for and presented on behalf of the PA CareerLink in Huntingdon. My name is Candy Price-Winnick. I'm the Youth Career Development Specialist at the CareerLink in Huntingdon. And we're going to talk today about how time managed you are and areas where you can improve. So I'm just going to jump right in. The first thing you have to consider when you're figuring out how time managed are your own patterns, your own behaviors. So you got to start with a self-assessment. Your level of time management depends on a number of things, including your own behavioral patterns. So do you have a daily calendar? Do you try to return phone calls within 24 hours? Are you timely with and at work? Do you get your projects done on time? Are you at work on time? Do you have a personal filing system? Things like that. And if you can answer yes to all of the questions on the screen, you're probably pretty well time managed. If you answer yes to a couple, you're probably doing okay, but have some room to improve. If you answer no to all of these questions, there are some behaviors you may need to work on to improve your time management. The second thing you should consider when assessing your time management are your deep-seated habits and environmental factors. So, do you take work home more than once per week? Do you often stay late at work? Is lunch your most substantial meal of the day? Do you frequently skip breakfast? If you answer yes to all of these questions that you see on your screen, there are some things you need to work on, some habits, some environmental factors. If you answer no to these, you're probably okay. But these are some things to keep in mind. Another thing you need to consider is your relationship to time. How you view time impacts how you manage your time. So if you view time as hollow, available, ready, blank, or empty, you view it as something to be filled. This can be good. It can mean you're not under a lot of time pressure, or it can be bad, as it can mean that you don't necessarily value your time. You just see it as something that's there to be used. If you view time as jammed, exhausting, relentless, tense, or bumpy, you view time as the enemy. This is a bad place to be. You don't want to view time as your enemy. You want to view it as something you can manage. And if you view time as an opportunity, as busy, handy, friendly, or exciting, you take charge of your time. You know how you use your time. You probably use it well. And it's likely that you have mixed feelings about time, that you fall in any of these categories, one or more, all three of them. So just keep that in mind. How you view your time can develop over the years. It can develop over the days. It can just depend on the day. But keep in mind how you're viewing time. So there are some time management myths that we'd like to dispel with this. Myth number one is that time management is just another label for obsessive behavior. Obsessiveness is defined as a persistent and often irrational set of thoughts that creep into your consciousness and are hard to chase out. Compulsion is what happens when obsession triggers action, and compulsive actions are often anchored in time and can cause unwanted stress. So, to prevent compulsive behaviors related to time and be better time managed, you should be aware of overcommitments to your time, as well as your perception of the requirements that something's going to take. Be aware of how you perceive how long it's going to take to do something, and be aware that figuring out the most time-efficient solution is not always necessarily feasible. Sometimes that is just not possible to figure out the most time-efficient way. So an example, an obsessive salesperson is going on a short 5-city trip, wants to figure out the best way to do it. The bad news, well, the most time-efficient way. The bad news is that there are 120 different ways that trip could be scheduled. So remember to settle for a good solution. It does not have to be the best. A second time management myth is that time management extinguishes spontaneity and joy. This is not true. Time-managed people set aside whole blocks of time for life's pleasures. They understand that certain things need to be organized, others do not. So a way to kind of assess how you're doing, is consider the enjoyable activities that you've done in the past month. Things you enjoy, hiking, fishing, reading, gardening. If you can count 2 or more things that you've done that you genuinely enjoy, you're doing well. If you find time for more That's awesome. If you can count only one or even none, make sure you're making time for the things that you find enjoyable. A third time management myth is that one size fits all. This is not true. Your goal should be to find a time management style that fits you. You may prefer to work in a linear fashion, so everything in one line, one thing at a time, get project A done before you move to project B. Or you could prefer to work in a holistic fashion. You can juggle multiple tasks at one time. Um, you can work on project A for a little bit, then project B, then project C. It doesn't really matter to you. You may be a sprinter. You might work great in short bursts with lots of energy, or a cross-country type who burns less brightly but more evenly throughout the day. You should feel comfortable tailoring your time management style to your needs. So figure out what works for you and do that. There is a basic time prioritization tool that is easy to use. We really recommend it. It is the oldest and the most referenced system by time management experts, and it's the ABC system. So in this system, you look at the tasks that you need to accomplish and label them A, B, or C. So A tasks are those that must be done. They have to get done. They can generate great results when done. When they're not done, they can generate serious, unpleasant, or disastrous consequences. Immediacy is what makes A tasks. That's what A is all about. These are things you need to get done or something bad is going to happen, essentially. B tasks are those that should be done soon. They're not as pressing as A tasks. They can be postponed, but typically not for long. If postponed long enough, they will easily rise to A status, or as things change, they will rise to A status. And the final is a C task. These are tasks that can be put off without creating dire consequences. Some things can linger in this category indefinitely. Some things may eventually rise to A or B status. It depends on the time if they're deadline based. And there is one more that we like to point out. These are D level tasks. So these are things that theoretically don't ever need to be completed. These are things that are rarely anchored to deadlines. It's stuff that would be nice to accomplish, but can be ignored without any real consequences. An example might be writing your memoirs or repainting your mailbox. Things that should be done, but they don't ever have to be done. So how can you use this to prioritize your time? When you want to utilize the system, label every task with a letter value. Every task you write down, every task you create in your planner, label it with an A, B, C, or a D if you're so inclined. When you make your to-do list, write it in a random order. Write it in the order that it comes to you. Then go back through and label each item with a rating. And finally, create a 3 to 4 tray filing system corresponding to the A, B, and C system. So, what creates issues with time management? There are a number of things. We call them thieves of time and time leaks. So, procrastination is a big one. Procrastination is, at its base level, putting off a task because it may be unpleasant, overwhelming, have an unclear task flow, have an unclear goal, you have a tendency to overcommit, you have a tendency to cramming, you have a fear of failure, and maybe you have a fear of change. Consider, when you're procrastinating, when you find yourself doing that, consider why you're procrastinating and consider what you're procrastinating on doing. You're going to find that every task is tied to one of these 8 factors. Everybody procrastinates. It's something we all do. What's important is bringing it to your consciousness and being aware that you're doing it. Some time leaks that have been pointed out in the professional world, these are based on a survey of hiring managers, office managers, things like that. One is socializing. Socializing at work can be a time leak, but it's also important to office morale. A work-only workday would probably get a little tedious, but when you socialize, make sure it isn't having a negative impact on your projects. Misplacing things, let's be real, nothing is ever lost. It's misplaced. So make sure you have a place for everything and everything in its place. That way you can easily locate what you need. Forgetting things, this is huge. 50% of what you hear or read, you will forget within 1 minute. So to prevent that time leak, to prevent having to go back and do something because you forgot to do section B or whatever. Write everything down, especially if it's important information. Commuting is another time leak. I am a commuter. Commutes can vary from person to person. My commute's about 15 minutes. For somebody else, it might be 45 minutes. Somebody else, it might be an hour. Just be aware that it can be dead time. I'm a big proponent of listening to podcasts on my commute. It is not necessarily work related, but it helps keep my mind busy, keep me engaged. It is important to note that commuting should not become an opportunity to become a workaholic. It can be a time for continued learning. If your commute doesn't require you to drive, if you take the train or the bus or whatever, it might be a great time to catch up on your reading, read the paper, things like that. And that leads me to the next time leak, which is reading. Unfortunately, some managers do view reading time as a waste of time. This is unfortunate because, frankly, reading is an essential wellspring of gaining useful information. There is something in your day-to-day that you're going to have to read, be it an email, be it an advisory. Until video or other technology comes out and does it better, reading is still important. And the final time leak we want to point out is long-winded people. We all have dealt with folks who are a little long-winded. You can take steps to avoid being trapped, for lack of a better word, by long-winded individuals. Some that I recommend, especially on the phone, is outline your time at the beginning of a conversation. So if you know you're going to have a call with someone who's long-winded, say, hey, it's nice to hear from you, but I only have 10 minutes. Or if it's an in-person conversation, you can remain standing. These are not all-inclusive tips, but they are a couple. Don't be rude, but be aware when someone might be a little long-winded. So that's it. That's our whole presentation. Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the CareerLink, you can call our office at 814-641-6408. You can also visit us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/PA CareerLink Huntingdon County. Thank you for joining us.